Hey, good morning, guys. Today we're going to go over program pairings specifically for hypertrophy, rebirth, and the 2.0. Before we get to like exactly the pairings, because I got a list of that here, we'll definitely contend with some jet noise. But that's why we got the microphone. So again, program pairings specifically for the hypertrophy, rebirth, as well as the 2.0. Okay, and so again, like why hypertrophy? So I'm gonna kind of define that first. Really, like this is how we're seeing it. This is how we're working through it. This is the examples of it, and so we work from the examples of when we're seen in selection or whatever it might be, and we'll show you here in a second. Okay, so hypertrophy isn't. A lot of times people are kind of like, oh, I didn't really think of it like that, because most of us as coaches, trainers, athletes, whatever, we think of hypertrophy. I guess guilty is like I think of like, yeah, the bodybuilders, the big guys, they're real big guys, and we know or we think we've always been told those big guys can't do, and they're right. In the same way that former Navy SEALs aren't good at being bodybuilders, bodybuilders don't go the other way either. So it's pretty interesting, right? But we can learn a lot from them. And hypertrophy isn't just those big guys. In the tactical space, we here Performance First, my wife and I, we think of it as more of a rebuild, remold, and repair. That's really, because that's hypertrophy, it's Latin, it's increased tissue, to repair tissue, to remold it, right? We're looking at trying to improve that tissue, whatever that might be for whatever reason. And here's the functions, right? There's two reasons why, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but when you're gonna do hypertrophy, what are we gaining from hypertrophy? What is our goal, or two things or things we're looking? There's a physical adaptation, right? And there's gonna be a nervous system adaptation. And like we're looking at physiological, right? The physiological base is physical, and it's also our nervous system. So like we're trying to get a benefit of both of them. But what does that mean, right? Okay, like an example is so if we're going to do a hypertrophy, because we're trying to do these things because we need better numbers for the PST, we need more durability for selection, whatever it might be. Okay, we were saying I don't have the numbers I need to get better, I need to get stronger, bigger. Before we think of, oh, what's that mean? We start with hypertrophy because we need two adaptations. We need the first being a nervous system adaptation, being, hey, right? Well, what is that? Like, what do I need? Okay. When you're doing hypertrophy, like our hypertrophy program, we're asking you to say, hey, I need you to stay focused for a long time with good posture and do these reps and keep count. There's a lot actually going on. Keep your notes. Oh yeah, do it like this. Keep the posture. Don't break down. There's all these actually intense pieces of focus that go over long periods of time. Like that's practice, right? But we're taking on some of us coming from sport, and now we've got to train for this thing. I need to be more well-rounded. I need to take on more postures so my drills and skills get even wider, right? So we're gonna go into hypertrophy to check our nervous system. And right, the example is like, okay, let's say for a real good example is like, again, on target, I mean, for real world, again, like I'm doing hypertrophy in training, how does that transfer into me being an operator on a gun? Well, I'm clearing buildings for a long time or in a location, and I have intense focus and thought that's accompanied with my physical posture, right? Yes, it's a different sport, it's a different athletic, but that transferability is right there, okay? So we get that intense focus, that we get to improve our emotional skill at work, right? That's because that emotional skill we improve during hypertrophy, those long forms of exercise and focus, they transfer really well, again, into shooting and moving, right? That's what we're looking at. And so you also on the other side is like, what is the physical adaptation for hypertrophy, right? It's moderate or intense, skilled, athletic, tactical. We're saying tactical in this space, like moderate or intense, skilled, tactical movement over long periods of time. Like so hypertrophy, you want to, hey, I need to get better long-term focus, but I need to get better long-term, kind of say strength endurance in a way, right? So you're like, okay, I need to have the physical posture. I need to have worked on the emotional state to keep that physical posture for a longer and longer periods of time. And it's going to be improved by strength and power and speed, right? We'll get to that video too, but that's what we're looking at, right? Why hypertrophy? Because I need more physical whatever for longer periods of time in the mountains, in the desert, in the pool, wherever it might be, right? That's what we're trying to really improve is why hypertrophy. It's not just because I want to get on stage. It's not just because I want to fill out my shirt, right? But I want to be able to climb long distances high, right? With gear, right? I want to be able to do that with assistance, of course, with climbing gear, by getting a little bit more purposeful mass, not just bigger. We're getting purposeful mass in the tactical space, not the body. We're not trying to get mass in the bodybuilding world. We learn from it. We glean from its educational processes, but we have to apply hypertrophy a little bit different. Okay, so now the pairings. Okay, now that we have said this is what hypertrophy is, as we define it, so we can work from here. Okay, here's the pairings. So what can I pair with hypertrophy, rebirth, and the 2.0? Okay, we have a hypertrophy run program that basically is a 1-for-1 layover. And you'll see that when you have a layover, like you lay it on top, I guess I'm not being literal, but if you look at it, you'll see that legs and back days will not have a running or any sort of day. They might have a walking prescribed and things like that, but that trend is gonna throughout all these. So on legs and back day, unless we've said, hey, specifically do this, we're gonna change this for some particular parameters, but unless we haven't said specifically to you in person, like an email, whatever it might be, right? You're not gonna do running or rucking or some things on these things that we're gonna talk about that you compare with on your legs and back day during hypertrophy or hypertrophy 2.0, or the rebirth or 2.0, excuse me, okay? But like I said, the hypertrophy run is perfect. Why are we gonna do hypertrophy run program? Why are we gonna run during hypertrophy? We are gonna run during hypertrophy not to really improve my run time. Because if I'm doing hypertrophy, my goals are, hey, I need to improve these two aspects as it pertains to my PST or my job. This isn't part of, so if once I improve this, then I can stop hypertrophy, really focus on running. But if I wanna really keep holding my aerobic base, plus we know that we rebuild, remold, and repair faster when we have a really good aerobic base, good capillary beds through all these new muscles that we're trying to build. So we do want to keep and maintain our aerobic base, and so these are the running pairings, or the aerobic pairings right here, okay? Again, the rucking phase 2 can be paired with it, but again, not on legs and back day, all right? The comprehensive aerobic run program, or phase 1, that comprehensive run program pairs very nicely with this. Just not, you're gonna kind of, we say cherry pick it. It's not gonna be a 1-to-1 layover, like in a sense, but you can look at it and say, hey, on biceps day, I can pull one, early, I pull one out of this one, you cherry pick one. And that's why it's in block format, guys. Like when we're saying cherry pick, it's like the program's laid out in a day, 2, 3, 4, whatever, or back day, legs day. It's like, oh, I'm on this day. I can look at the running program and go, oh, that block can be paired with that block and so on. And that's why it's in a paired in block format, okay? So that comprehensive run program works really well. Like I said, no back and legs day. The tempo run, or phase 1.5, pairs decently with hypertrophy, but this is kind of a little more advanced and things we've given you direction to do so, okay? Maybe not the first stop, okay? Definitely not the first stop. Don't throw these all in one bag, okay? Okay, the 1.5. The phase 1 aerobic swim, right? The condition with swim is this. If your skill of swimming is very high, when during hypertrophy, swimming becomes more of a recovery day, or just, again, another way to maintain the aerobic base without the ground force punishment or management, we'll say, okay? So the aerobic swim is good, but again, during hypertrophy, when you're swimming, the focus in the pool should be skill, not to build this big aerobic base, okay? The CSS swim program also pairs exceptionally well with hypertrophy, but just don't do it on legs and back day. Again, you'll see the workload if you haven't already experienced that together as well. And again, going with swimming, if you're not such a competent swimmer and this, that, and the other, take long rest periods, right? That's what we're focused on, I think, is during hypertrophy. Think of that muscle action, the vigorous nature, or it's intense, but it's not violent, it's not overly heavy. Think of how you're moving in the weight room in the hypertrophy, rebirth, or the 2.0 programs. That type of athletic motion, that vigorous type of motion, we want that type of motion and vigorousness, not more, not less. So that's why if you see, look at ruck, look at a 30-pound ruck on somebody, and they're in a good pace, a good breath pace, they got a good clip, that looks a lot like hypertrophy in its way. So that's why it pairs well with it, and that's why some of these won't, okay? You're not gonna be doing max sprints on days in which you're trying to rebuild, remold, or repair, right? That's for power and speed, different video. But see, you're gonna see that when you pair these things well, you start pairing, like I said, the rucking phase 2, okay, comprehensive aerobic run, the tempo run, the phase 1, the combat side stroke, okay? Those pair super well, and when you start pairing those, you will see your training really advance and improve, not just because you're getting better training, but you'll see how complementary some things are, and you'll see how some things are not super complementary.